Welcome to the Hall Space Podcast. It's about connections. I'm your host, Dr. Rich Hall, and this is a weekly conversation about whatever and however I see to connect things. For people who want to connect, chat, and learn a thing or two about a thing or two. Without further ado, let's start the show. Hello.
Hey there.
Welcome.
Welcome and welcome back.
Welcome. This is the Hall Space Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Rich Hall, and I'm here with my lovely and capable wife, Nicole.
Hey there.
How's everybody doing?
Surviving, living the good life.
Living the life. Living life.
Living the life.
Living the life. Yeah. I wanted to come back and retract something I said last week, and not necessarily retract, but amend.
Yeah.
Something I said last week. So I was listening to the show earlier today, and I realized that I said black people can be racist, and I actually don't believe that on its face. I mean, most times when people understand racism, and this is getting deep in the first 5 minutes, right?
Yeah, it is. Go for it.
But what I was actually trying to say at that moment is that black people can be complicit in systemic racism. Which
this is exactly what I thought you meant.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure, because we people will take that and say, see, Dr. Rich Hall just admitted that black people can be racist. It's not what he was saying.
No. Oh, yeah.
That we those of us who have a nuanced understanding of race and racism understand that racism is privilege and power.
Right.
And that racism, particularly American racism, is this interesting intercession of one group holding systemic power and being able to alter the fate and realities of those around them by wielding that power to discriminate against groups of people. And because black people they can be complicit in that system, but they do not necessarily, as a group, they do not create it, nor do they hold the power of the group, so that they cannot be racist by that definition. They may not be systemically racism, which is the better definition of what we understand as racism. It's very interesting to me that people disagree with these definitions when those of us who genuinely study it are telling you, oh, no. When you're talking about treating people differently, you're talking about prejudice. When you're talking about thinking about people differently, you're talking about bias. When you're talking about treating people differently, you're talking about bigotry and discrimination. And so, we have to understand that the language is nuanced, and that we have, as we better understand these concepts, we have a better understanding of how to define them. And there are people who just don't wish at all to entertain a conversation about it. They wouldn't want to entertain a conversation anyway, but as soon as you say black people can't be racist, they check out. But it's like, oh, you were never trying to have the real conversation anyway, if you're not willing to continue to entertain a much more nuanced discussion about what it means in this country. And so, when I said that last week, I was speaking to black people are able to be complicit. And that means you can have black people who tend to trend away from the group definition, how we as black people understand it. And, they'll say things like systemic racism doesn't exist. And white people will jump all over it and be like, yeah, see, so Candace Owens said it. So those twins said it. So this black person said it. So it must be true that systemic racism doesn't exist, and all the other black people. And even in there is an implicitly racist assumption that one black person speaks for the majority of black people. Or the idea that black people are such children that they don't have an understanding of their own experiences. And so you don't have to listen because one black person has validated your point of view.
I mean, let Candace tell us how our experience. Thank God she's not a judge.
Well.
Or a lawyer. Right? Because
so,
when you speak of systemic racism, you're really talking about positions of being able to really affect people's lives, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and an example would be, she would get into a position of power and
deny someone a job
for
speaking African-American vernacular.
Right. Or wearing their natural hair, or,
Or, as is often the case, when we talk about police overreach, people who who don't believe in systemic racism but darn sure practice it. They believe that if you act a certain way to a cop, that cop has the authority to break your civil rights.
Yes.
To not treat you fairly, even because you're not acting fairly. That person who is employed by the state to uphold the state's law can then act illegally. And deny you your rights by, say, hurting you, by putting false charges on you, because systemically they are allowed to do that. They have traditionally done that, even though we are fighting against that.
Right.
So people who are really deep into the systemic racism will say, well, then the cop should have treated you poorly because you behaved poorly. Right. Even though if the law was ultimate, right? If the law was by and of itself, they're supposed to follow the law, which means everybody's supposed to follow the law, then we shouldn't live under a nation where one person's poor behavior means you can break the law on them.
Well, and one of the things that I read said the law and the justice covers the people that follow and listen to the rules and those who don't.
Yes. And
those who don't.
And the person who swears to uphold the law has a higher responsibility to uphold that law. So that doesn't mean they could start charging you with false charges. The most false charge in America is resisting arrest. You could be charged with resisting arrest for doing anything that the cop feels is just against what he's telling you to do at the moment. When in reality, you're only under arrest if they can say that you committed a crime. Right. So you have to be charged for a crime and arrested for that crime for you to resist the arrest.
You are under arrest.
You are being detained for a crime. Not you did not comply with an order that I gave you.
I pulled you over and you got an attitude problem. You smoked a cigarette.
And now you're resisting arrest, Sandra Bland. Right?
You're right. Right.
She's committed no crime other than just not listening in a manner that he appreciates. And for some reason, it just happens with African Americans a little bit more.
Well, I mean, if you got a stanky attitude, they're not going for it.
I know. And it's not like they ever approach us with the nicest attitudes all the time.
They do not. And the interesting thing is, and a lot of people, they'll hear this and not think it's true, but honest to goodness, when we get pulled over, they are already on edge, right?
Quite frequently.
But then you'll see them pull over or actually...
You see the videos of people.
You see the footage of they went into that house in Miami University.
Yeah, and we're so nice. Hey, guys, we're just trying to help the community here.
They're having a COVID party.
Yeah.
And they're having a party. The house, the people that lived in the house were
under quarantine for COVID, so they were not supposed to be.
COVID.
The people were not supposed to be leaving the house, nor were they supposed to have guests in their home.
But they had
under the COVID
people.
restrictions at the beginning of the COVID. But they had multiple people in the home,
and the officer
above the 10 that were supposed to like if you had a gathering, it could be more than 10 people. And the officer comes and he's super nice and he's super congenial.
He's like, "Do you understand what we're trying to? It's,
which is not we never get a. Do you understand what it's trying to do? I never get a. Which is in many ways it's like, hey, do you see my point of view? It's always you better see my point of view or else.
Right.
So, and
I said what I said.
And there's nothing systemic happening, I guess. Because even though we have different experiences and they are documented.
They're absolutely
There's
documented.
no reason to believe that there's anything systemic happening here.
Honestly,
there's no system at play.
If you put enough people in a room, African American, white, and otherwise, you will see that our experiences will be different than their experiences.
What? No.
Yes.
No. You're implying that there's something systemic happening. Here's the thing, ladies and gentlemen. This isn't even the show we were intending to have.
Totally not.
We totally got off track. So we're going to loop it back around and get to the original topic. It's okay. We get a little fired up about the racism.
We do.
Because it is our experience. And I've fought for 43 years now to get people to understand that experience. I've studied it because I didn't understand it. Right. And I still have people I've been in that game for 20-something years since college.
Yeah.
Understanding this concept.
What do you
doing literal research on it. So I've studied it, seen it in action, had my own preconceptions challenged and altered over time. And it's as if
that the people that
I don't know what I'm talking to about
are the people that do not read about it, do not
care to read about it.
Do not care to read
about it. I remember in
an
argument with a friend, I was like, hey, are you trying to tell me that when you say systemic racism isn't real, you trying to tell me my dissertation was falsified?
They are not your friend.
And he was like, well, I've never read your dissertation. And implicit in that statement was, I do not intend to read any of that thing that you wrote.
And ultimately, I think that's what you said. It's like, you're not even, are you asking a question?
Yeah.
Or are you just trying to defend yourself against what you're saying?
Yeah.
He is not.
He's in his mind, he does think he's my friend. He is not. The way that I currently understand friendship at age 43, he's a person that I am acquainted with. And that at one time in my life, I had an affinity for, but under the current circumstance, it's very hard to see through to those good qualities. But me being the centrist that I am, it's like, well, there is a circumstance in which we are friendly.
No, I mean,
definitely opposing views that make it very difficult to tolerate.
Absolutely. And I will say this, if we were going out to dinner and just having drinks with this person, we would have a good time.
Yeah, relatively.
As long as we didn't talk
politics at all. I mean, that's literally been the case going back to the 90s. Like, there are certain friends that we have that you just shouldn't talk politics over dinner.
Yes.
Because it's just going to go wrong.
It's going to go left, but I feel like...
Or right.
or right.
It's going to go hard right.
But
hard conservative right.
Yeah.
Fair and balanced.
Man. But this person in general, I think there's, of course, that meme that goes around like, we can disagree on dinner.
Yeah.
What we can't disagree on is
civil rights.
If my son is in a car and your son is in a car, you would justify your son being treated differently than mine. You would justify my son.
Or ignore.
Ignore that they're even being treated differently. Yes.
Yeah. No. Nothing's different. Nothing different is happening under the circumstances.
I inherently have a problem with that.
Yeah, particularly now that sons are involved.
I'd
like to transition to our real topic because we've been about 10 minutes into this one. And this is not what we intended to talk about today, but I knew I had to make sure that it wasn't, it's already on, I was going to say on wax that Dr. Rich Hall has said black people can be racist, but what he's actually saying is black people can engage in systemic racism. They could be prejudiced, they can be biased.
Yes. Okay.
And that because there are power structures that are inherent in the way we've constructed racism in the country, and it's not me, I didn't construct racism in this country. No. I'm just telling you via my understanding of it. And then when people are denying it, they're doing the same thing that we did when we denied germ theory, when we denied that atoms exist, when we thought that maggots automatically sprung up out of food, and we didn't realize that flies brought them as their eggs. Like when it comes to these things within society and within science and in the world, we don't always have a full understanding of it until we spend years studying it. And they weren't studying racism when they were holding us as slaves. They only had to start studying it about 50, 60 years ago.
Which is not that long ago.
Not that long ago. Brown versus Board of Education is one person's lifetime ago.
Right. And she...
Ruby
just passed away.
No, her mom died.
Her mom... Oh, it was her mom.
She's still alive. Okay, she's still alive. She's still alive.
She's the age of your mom and my mom.
Right. She's
younger
still alive.
Than your dad slightly.
Right.
I mean...
So racism isn't that long ago.
Yeah. That's the whole point. Like...
segregation isn't that long ago.
Segregation isn't that long ago.
We're still talking within one lifespan.
Racism is forever.
Oh my God. It feels like it's
it feels like forever.
And so because we've spent more than 60 years studying it, we're like, we have a different understanding of how this concept goes. And if you truly care about humans and about science and about being on the right side of history, then be open to the fact that these definitions are changing and changing in some ways for the better. But what happens is tribalism rears its head and people start saying, well, I don't want to change. I don't want to believe this because it means thinking in terms of myself as the bad guy, when really take yourself out of it, as I have to literally take myself out of. I'm a type of person who could still say, I love America, but America has done some effed up things to a lot of people.
Yes.
And if I can do that, I'm pretty sure white people, you can do it too.
Yes. You can disagree with the way that things have been handled.
Yeah. Yeah. We started heavy. I did not want to start heavy. I'd like to move into our actual topic, which is the SADs. We're going to talk a little bit today about seasonal affective.
You're calling it the SADs?
No, that's really what it's called. Seasonal Affective Disorder.
No, but you're calling it the SADs.
The show's going to be called the SADs. It may be called the COVID SADs, but it's going to be called the SADs.
I thought we would call it the voice.
The voice? You want to call it the voice?
The voice in your head.
See, I wanted to avoid it just because I know for some people, they don't always have a voice. Like, as I understand it.
They just don't always recognize it.
I don't necessarily have an ongoing dialogue that is negative when it comes to my seasonal depression. It's just, I have the other stuff.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And so,
there's a lot of
There's a lot of people who do have the voice.
The voice.
And the voice is what kicks people's ass.
Yes, right.
For me, it's just a mood shift, the mood change.
Right. So, you're, and there's somebody close to us that during this time of year, they get special lighting.
Yes.
To help.
So light therapy
that.
is one of the ways you treat it. I was going to talk about that near the end.
Gotcha.
First, we're talking about seasonal affective disorder,
what is that?
Which is a diagnosis that is a type of major depression. Major depression being what most people understand as depressive symptoms, wherein you're experiencing a variety of symptoms that cluster around low mood, or depressive feelings, hopelessness, hypersomnia, insomnia, as well as changes in appetite, changes in sleep patterns. A lot of people, Black people in particular, tend to experience agitation or irritability. And so some of those are the exact same symptoms as major depression. Some of the difference is that it often happens for 1 in 20 people, 5% of the population are said to have a clinically significant level of seasonal affective disorder. And so for those people, it's when we go into this corridor, like right around daylight savings time, when we go into this to the holiday season.
Hour, but it gets dark early.
Yeah. So the changes in weather, the changes in light, people start to experience a low mood, or a downturn in mood that happens seasonally. So every year around this time, it happens.
So, I mean, when you say, so for us, we're in Cincinnati, and we get the hour change, and this time of year, it gets dark early, and there's a lack of sunshine. It's significant.
And it gets colder, so you have to start going inside. So it's like some people think of it as like the winter blues or like hibernation kind of thing. It's a tendency for us to want to do that, which if you think about it, a lot of large creatures hibernate when the sun starts to go away because it's going to be a long winter. So they eat a lot of carbs, they eat a lot of food.
They load up
so that they can sleep through the winter, because expending energy in the winter is going to be harder because it's so cold.
So do you notice, or do you know if there is a significant difference between us and those who are in like Key West or the islands or California?
See, that's a really good question. I'd have to look into that. I don't know that for sure. I do know that the cold temperature and the lack of, like, we get less light.
I know how it affects us. Yes. Because it's just, and it's something that we're used to, and it comes every year. And so a lot of us have coping mechanisms, maybe that, maybe you can discuss what some of those could be. But I'm interested in, for example, my favorite place in the world, Clearwater, they boast about having, 80 to 90% of their year is sunny. So, out of 365 days in a year, 300 some odd of those are sunny all day. And so I wonder if they have a similar issue with seasonal affective disorder, or if it's just called something else for them. Maybe the lack of seasons.
So so actually some studies have shown that it's more related to the changes in sunlight than temperature. So it's a lack of sunlight. And so because, unless you live on the equator, the sunlight changes for you no matter what, because the earth is tilting. And so
you notice that difference.
And there are people who have severe symptoms, and then there are people who have mild symptoms. But studies show that for those people who, what would be our winter, versus the tropical summers, which might be, they also experience seasonal affective disorder. So I just looked it up. And I'm looking at a study that says,
because it does get colder for them, and they do notice it, and they do still call it winter for those people who do live in. Some of the people that we know that live in Florida.
Yeah, they did a case report. I'm looking at a study that was done in 95.
Interesting.
And in the southern hemisphere, and people in certain latitudes, people do still experience affective disorder that begin in the summer and characterized by the typical autumn-winter depression.
So they can notice the difference in the... there's a shift no matter what. Wow.
Tungtang, Ackerman, Cordes, et al., we'll say. Yeah, so this study, Seasonal Affective Disorder in Tropical Country, a case report, was done in 1995. I'll drop it in the show notes. But so still affects people who don't live like in the Midwest.
Right.
And it, like I said, it's considered a subset of major depressive disorder. But there are people who have it that don't have major depressive disorder.
Right. They just sort of...
People have milder cases of it. They say that 3 times as many people have a version of it that's super mild. That's the winter blues that we think about. I think that's one of the reasons that I've always thought, and I may have read this somewhere or heard it, why we have so many holidays at the beginning of the winter, because we need something to help us get through the dark.
And gathering with people will help. Yeah,
gathering with people helps. So maybe that's why, they needed Saturnalia and all those pagan holidays that became, Thanksgiving and Christmas and New Year's, because humans need something to help us with this transition.
And if you think about Christmas, it's nothing but lights, which I love.
Yeah, which also
Christmas.
came from them setting trees on fire. They used to set pine trees on fire for the brilliant light. And that's why we put lights in pine trees. And it has nothing to do with Jesus. But anyway, so that I don't get in trouble for blasphemy.
We still love the Lord.
You could still love the Lord and just understand that these traditions came from maybe less Jesus-related things. So some of the symptoms, I'll just go ahead and I mentioned some of them before, but I'll rattle some of them off. Okay. If this is how you know you have major depressive disorder and not just the winter blues. Mm-hmm. Most people, they'll feel some sort of depression every day for multiple days, usually for a week to 2 weeks, or maybe even longer. And it's depression most of the day. So it's like this mood is hitting you most of the day. Mm-hmm. You might have some thoughts or feelings about helplessness or hopelessness, worthlessness. Your energy is going to be really low. You're going to be really blah most of the time. Activities that used to be super interesting or fun, you're just not going to be able to find the energy or the interest. This isn't really as interesting. Yeah. Usually it's going to be some sleep problems such as hypersomnia, which is sleeping a lot, or insomnia, difficulty sleeping. So it might be that you want to sleep most of the day and then can't sleep at night. Right. And some of that's because of the sleeping during the day. Right. Or it's just, frequent wakefulness, things like that. Appetite's going to change. Usually people want to eat a lot more, usually eating a lot of carbs or sweets. Might see weight changes, so putting on a lot more weight during the summer or during the winter. Yeah. Feeling more sluggish, feeling more weighed down and agitated, irritable, as I said before, which is often how we miss depression in black males, because black males tend to be more irritable and agitated. And so it's looked at as, say, oppositional defiant disorder. They're acting out and they're disruptive, but in reality, it might be depression symptoms that are just manifesting differently because black males tend to externalize as opposed to internalize. So they act out as opposed to acting in, whereas females tend to act in, and internalize. Difficulty concentrating. I know that's definitely been one that I've struggled with a lot since the pandemic started, is difficulty concentrating. Yep. And it's only been worse for me within the last couple of weeks. Right. And then thoughts of death or suicide are the red flag symptoms where you might just think, oh, if I could just not be here. It could be really genuinely like focusing on or fixating on the idea or thought of death, or passive suicidal ideation. If I wasn't alive, things might be easier. Yeah. And so people might find themselves struggling with those types of thoughts and feelings, which if you are at that point, you find yourself thinking those types of things over and over again, definitely seek help and support. You might think that your friends and family would be burdened. That's one thing that I often hear from people with depression.
People are never burdened.
So here's the thing. People might not have everything they need to manage what you are dealing with, but that doesn't mean that they consider you a burden. No. It is one of the things that you need to do when you have these issues is to figure out who can do for you. Right. So for your friends, letting them know, hey, I'm going through a tough time isn't the same as depending on them to be the thing that saves you from depression. Right. They might not have it to do that. And that's okay.
And I think often people think that telling them that they're even having issues at all feels like they're placing a burden on them.
Yes, very frequently.
Make them happy, and that is not necessarily what the people that are around you will think. Yeah. I know if someone is going through something, I would like for you to tell me.
Right. Give people the opportunity to care about you. And then, so sometimes the mindset of depression is often very sensitive to rejection and to insult. Yep. And so, any little thing the person could do means they don't care about me. They don't want me. Right. And so you have to sort of be a little bit more open-minded. One of the things that I often teach people with depression is if you've had, 500 interactions with a person in your life that have been positive and you have those one or two that are negative, that doesn't mean that it invalidates the other 500. Right. But the way the brain works, being a problem-solving pattern recognizing problem solver. Sorry, I got that backwards that time. It looks for the pattern of behavior. We have a bad sociometer, which means we are bad at predicting outcomes, particularly when we are sensitive to rejection and bad at looking at when someone's being positive towards us. We might not even know that someone's being positive towards us. So all it takes is that one negative comment will erase 10 compliments. They just disappear like that. And
it can shut a lot of people down.
It shuts a lot of people down before they can get any help because they assume just because you said something weird or off, that meant you didn't care. When in reality, that person could be going through any number of things. Depression often makes you focus only on yourself as though you think this song's about you, when the other person's probably going through their own stuff. And if they knew that this was vital and important, they'd try to help. Yeah. But once again, recognizing that normal people have their limitations too. They can't be the person that pulls you out of the fire, but they would maybe say send you text messages.
Or they'd hold your hand through whatever process you needed to go through.
Right.
If you needed to go to primary care, if you needed to go to the...
They might be willing to sacrifice to help you there.
Absolutely. People who love you will do that.
Right.
Absolutely do that.
Neil Brennan, who is one of the guys who made the Chappelle Show with Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle's writing partner, and helped him write that, as well as the C.O.V.I.D movie that he did. I can't remember the name of it.
Half-Baked.
So Neil Brennan has a podcast where he was talking to Chris Rock, and he had done this stand-up show called Three Mics, and he said that Chris Rock would text him every day after he saw the show and say, "Don't kill yourself." And he said other people might reach out and say, "Hey, you got a lot to live for," and whatnot. He said, but Chris Rock said, I wanted to make sure that someone said to you, "Don't kill yourself."
Yeah.
And
wow,
I guess that's what it's like to be friends with Chris Rock. Is that he will just cut straight to the, I hope you got therapy. I hope you're eating well, but just don't kill yourself.
Hashtag when you're friends with a comedian.
Hashtag when you're friends with a comedian. Or maybe, non-therapy Rich Hall, because I would definitely say something like that to someone.
Definitely.
So
you wouldn't say that to your clients, but
I would
to your
say
friends.
There are some clients I might say that to. So you're not going to kill yourself this week, right? I like having you around.
When I went to the doctor, I took one of those assessments or whatever, and he's like, "Oh yeah, could you fill this out?" At the bottom, it says, "You don't want to hurt or harm yourself. You don't, do you?" Mm-hmm. It's like, before we go any further. No. It's kind of funny because most people assume, and I'll put this piece of advice out there and I'll say it from the rooftops. A lot of people are worried that if you ask a person about suicide, you are going to essentially be putting the idea in their mind or encourage them to do it. No, yeah.
And in reality, no, they've already thought about it. So if they're thinking about it. If you've thought about it, you thought about it. If you've never thought about it, you've never thought about it. If you've never thought about it, you've never thought about it. So it's never like, "Hey, do you want to kill yourself?" And they go, "I had never thought about it before.
Maybe I should do
But now that you brought it up, I should."
No.
More often than not, it's like they got the idea nagging in the back of their brain.
Yeah.
And you saying it out loud validates it.
Right.
And, in my profession, I can have a very frank conversation about it. It's funny to me that there are a host of things that I don't know what to do when asked. But if someone were to say to me, "I think I want to kill myself," I've got like a list of things that I just know to start asking. And that doesn't mean that it never throws me. There are very often moments where someone will say, I'm thinking about killing myself. And I go, "Oh, crap, what do I say to that?" And then immediately I can rattle off a whole, okay, so have you thought about how or when you do it? Is there a timetable? Do you have means? Do you have intent? So do you really want to do it, or have you just thought about it?
Right. There's a difference between.
There are very much differences between those.
And for those people who have actually stepped through those steps and thought,
really thought about it.
And you know that there's more of an emergency than not.
Right. And they will tell you. It's very rare that the person will say, "I don't want to tell you because you'll stop me." It's very rare. More often than not, before they're ever at that point, they're like, "This is what I'm going to do. It's just got to be done, and I'm going to do it this way tomorrow." And you're like,
"Okay."
And
they're sitting there with you because maybe that's not what they want to do.
Yeah, very often distressed by the thought.
They just want the pain to stop.
They just want the pain to stop. More often than not, they want the pain to stop. And so many of them, it's like, "Well, what if I just put you on a plane and send you to Fiji and let you sit on a beach for a week?"
Hey, stop there.
I'm not offering that to you, unfortunately.
You're not offering that to me?
I'm not offering that to you. But
You're not offering that to me?
I'm not in the moment offering that to you. I'm not saying I'm not ever offering that, but
I'm
today,
sad.
You may have the sads.
No, I'm sad. I'm sad. I have the sads.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sad.
Mm-hmm. I hear you.
Okay.
And you'd like some support.
I'm not talking to husband Richie. I'm talking to Dr. Hall.
Dr. Hall. You want Dr. Hall to give you a prescription to fly to an exotic location.
So, Dr. Hall, if you could send a note to my husband with a prescription that says that
you should get on a plane.
Needs Fiji.
You want to get on a plane during COVID, Nicole?
I do not.
Okay, then.
I do not.
All right.
I'm not leaving this house.
Yeah.
And that's what makes me sad.
That's not all. With that, we've come around the bend on the half hour, so we're going to pause for the cause, and we'll be right back and talk a little bit more about seasonal affective disorder and COVID. Please join us.
See you soon.
let me tell you about Anchor Podcast. It's the podcasting service that I use. Anchor.fm is the easiest way to make a podcast, and there are many different reasons why, but foremost is it's free. So you don't need to go out and buy a whole bunch of equipment. If you have a phone or a computer and a microphone, you can record and edit your podcast right on your phone or computer. So that's one major benefit, as well as the fact that they'll distribute your podcast to several different podcasting sites for you. Not only can your podcast be found on Anchor, it can also be found on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast as well. So you don't have to worry about going to all those different sites and setting yourself up. They'll do it for you. You can also make some money on your podcast. Say you have a podcast that only 5 people listen to on a regular basis. They don't limit you on how many subscribers you have to have in order to be able to make a little bit of change for your podcast to keep yourself going. So pretty much everything you need to start a podcast can be found at Anchor.fm. So go download the app either in the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or go to Anchor.fm to get started. And I guarantee you, it'll make things so much easier for you, like it has for me. Hello, welcome back.
Welcome back.
Dr. Rich Hall, the Hall Space Podcast. My lovely and capable wife, Nicole Hall.
Hey there.
And we are still talking about the Seasonal Affective Disorder, the C.O.V.I.D.
COVID-SADs.
And if you might recall, we said that it looks like, oversleeping, often appetite changes, so eating more, tiredness, sleepiness, lack of energy, feeling really blah. And also a lot of people, they go hermit, so they don't want to socialize. They just lack the energy to socialize. What would have been fun, even when they do go out, it just doesn't feel as fun, so they don't want to often push themselves to do things. And that a lot of people experience it, but only about 5% of the population truly have it to a clinical degree where it has effects on them.
So let me ask you this.
Sure.
For those who have seasonal affective disorder, if they have prior depressive mood, seasonal affective disorder is worse for them. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Or is it considered just depression for them?
It's considered depression for them largely because it is a type of major depressive disorder. So it's an offshoot of major depressive disorder. And so people with bipolar often will experience, this is when they'll go into a downturn.
Okay.
So they're manic during the summer manic during the summer, depressed during the winter.
Okay. So I heard that there's bipolar depression. Is that different than being
Yes, bipolar is different than, there are like 3 or 4 different types of bipolar.
Right.
They're the people who never really have like a fully manic episode, but they have hypomania, so they might have like mood swings or moments of mania.
Okay.
That only last a couple days or a little bit. But then there's, what we traditionally think of as bipolar, where you might be experiencing the ups and downs, usually weeks at a time for each of the ups and downs. Okay. And so bipolar depression isn't the clinical definition of what we're talking about, which is bipolar disorder.
Okay.
And then major depressive disorder is there are no highs, it's all lows. And then the lows tend to last, 2 weeks or more.
I was going to say, how long
and then there's
do those
dysthymia.
last? Yeah.
Usually 2 weeks or more, 2 weeks to some months, but there are times where you're not in the depressive cycle, right? Okay. Or you're cycling, but you're not in the depressive part of the cycle. So your lows are really low, but you baseline.
Okay.
So if you think of it as like a sine wave, bipolar people, they get the high, and the low lows.
Right.
Depressive people are sort of they plateau and then they low plateau, then raise up to about medium.
Okay.
Right. To about
so like normal is kind of like in the middle.
Normal's in the middle and they go low.
Okay.
Below that.
Okay.
And yeah, I feel like there was a third example that I was going to say. Oh, dysthymia is where you're always in a low. So that one, dysthymic people tend to just, there's no dipping. They tend to feel mostly depressed most of the time.
Are they at more of a chance of suicidal ideation?
Not necessarily.
No, they're just low.
Depressed. So depressed or bipolar people, I think, off the top of my head, are the ones who are the most likely to commit suicide. Depressive people might not ever have the energy to do it.
Oh, okay.
But bipolar people, when they're coming out of a depression and spiking into mania, they may be more likely to suddenly have the energy to plan suicide, and the lack of foresight to see how it's not going to, you know what I mean?
to regret it.
Yeah. And this is largely colloquial, so this is not considered mental health advice. But there are many people with depression who just never get the energy to plan what it even would be.
Yeah.
But they persistently think about it.
I got you.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so that's why sometimes certain medications and things are considered. Some medications will make you think about suicide more than you ever would.
Yeah.
Otherwise, and then other medications. It's like once the person starts to feel a little bit better, they're like, hey, maybe I can pull off this suicide now. It's this sort of weird phenomena that happens
that's
around.
Interesting. I never even know.
Yeah. So while we're talking about it, I also want to swing around and talk about some of the causes that they consider why
people get sad.
Get the SAD. And that is, the changes in light, mostly, as I was saying before. It's not that we think the changes in temperature, and it doesn't help. Right. The temperature makes it harder for you to go outside as often.
Absolutely does. And there's less sunlight, so that affects you as well.
So it's really less sunlight, and the temperature sort of feeds into that, right?
Right.
The temperature doesn't help, but it doesn't also hurt.
Right.
The circumstance, because people, as we said earlier, even in tropical locations have
the same
conditions. And then serotonin levels, and that usually comes from experiencing light. Serotonin levels are reduced during the winter, and then melatonin levels from the breaks in the circadian rhythm are also affected. And then holiday stress is one of the things we often don't think about, but the holidays can come with a lot of social, emotional stress for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And that can definitely be a contributing factor into why people start to feel more stressed and as a result have fewer resources around this time of year, because it's just, the impending holidays are coming. I think that has a lot to do with what pressure we put on ourselves for the holidays.
Right.
So yeah,
I know personally for myself, I'm sad.
You are currently experiencing the SAD.
I am currently experiencing the SAD, but I also struggle with anxiety and depression. And this year being different than every other year, November is a rough month for me because I am planning 2 birthday parties and the Thanksgiving and the Halloween, and all of that is very, very back to back. And so I do get stressed out about it.
Yeah, because you also have our birthday, my birthday.
So we have Halloween, and then we have your birthday, and then Victoria's birthday is the next week. We have one break, and then we have Thanksgiving. And so all of that is back to back. And I try to, even if we're not hosting the Thanksgiving, planning it, getting the kids together, making sure that, you normally do the cooking for that, but getting all the other stuff together for it, it's stressful, right? But what I will say, even though this year is definitely more low key because we're keeping to our COVID circle, being around other people and having a good time with them is helpful for me.
Yeah.
So, even though I am an introvert, there is something about, and maybe, I'm speaking, from the advantage point of, we've been in the house since March, right?
Yeah.
And this is coming off of, we saw Granny for her birthday, and then, my grandfather passed, but I got to see all of my family together, which hadn't happened. Which hadn't happened, in a long time. I got to see, pieces of myself, basically. Right.
Yeah.
And so then after that, we were shut down. We didn't do our mom, sister, girls trip. And so now I'm realizing that being able to go to West Virginia for Thanksgiving, we won't be able to do that. Have Addison come in for the birthday, like all of that stuff is what keeps you going, or what keeps me going. So if you can get me out of the house, I'll have a good time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so thankfully, the Fridays with our COVID circle has been really great. However stressful it is, right?
Yeah, it still comes with some stress.
It definitely still comes with stress. And the previous years, those came with stress too. But, you look back at those pictures and you're like, man, everybody came in for Victoria's birthday, or everybody comes in for your birthday, and we get to see all the aunts and uncles, like that. All of that, it really helps and it matters. And so I think there is a different kind of sadness, for myself and maybe a lot of other people, where, you can't do that this year.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, there's definitely a big lament at we are not able to practice these traditions.
We are not going to do that to be safe.
So many of the traditions, like, it was funny because in my younger, in my 20s, you start to pull away from your family quite a bit. And you start to,
got hair on your chest. Look at it.
Yeah.
You're going to go be grown.
Yeah,
right?
and hang out with your friends. And your friends become more important than your family. And then I had kids, and suddenly all those traditions.
All of that flipped.
And all those people suddenly became the most important thing. That my kids had to be around these people who helped to raise me and give me advice and could love on them. And it became very vital that we do these things that, you kind of gotten away from. It's like, sitting around the Christmas tree isn't such a big deal. I remember there was one year, I think we waited until midnight to open gifts because we were just kind of not paying attention and hanging out and just talking. And then we had kids, and suddenly it was like, oh, no, now we got to be there on time to get the gifts on time.
We want everybody to see. I mean, when we first started out, we had Ra. We would go to my grandmother's house because she liked to cook early, and then to your parents' house because they like to cook late, and then to my aunt and uncle's house because they like to have the after party, But it was always so important to interact with everybody and see your family.
Absolutely. It became very vital.
And there's nothing more beautiful than when you have children and you see the people that raised you and love you love on your children.
Right.
And and even if they don't really know your children, anytime people love on your children, feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good.
Yeah, it's very affirming and very much a, thing that helps you feel just more connected and it reminds you of, because sometimes, when you're in your teens, you remember a lot of the bad things that they did. Going back to some of how we're very good at remembering our rejection. So you were like, oh, that cousin was mean to me that time, or that uncle told me off that one time.
Yeah.
And it's like, a lot of that stuff sort of gets lost in the sauce. And now it's like, no, they're still pretty good people.
No.
And some of the times, and honestly, now that I have kids, it's like, I might have needed it.
Well, there's so many things that you understand so much more. I understand my family so much more through the lens of a parent.
Yeah.
And there are some things, and there are some things, honestly, you realize they were probably doing the best they can.
Yeah. With what they had.
With what they had. And honestly, sometimes...
And they grew up in a different era.
And you just sensitive, and you needed to be told, shut up. Okay,
right. You might have, sometimes. Okay.
Shut up.
Okay. So, in thinking about, and I will admit that I get sad around this time of year. So it's traditionally something that has happened going back to my teens.
I remember when we started dating, you said that. You said...
I get messed up around my birthday, and so usually it would manifest in a breakup. If whatever girl I started dating,
you said it was a curse, is what you said.
Yeah, I did call it a curse. It's like, if I'm dating a girl, we are going to break up in November. No matter when we started dating, no matter when it happened, November is going to be a breakup month.
Speaking, happy dating anniversary.
Happy dating anniversary. Yeah, we started dating November 13th or 14th. November 14th.
14th, right.
1998.
And I'm like, are we going to make it? Because he said, we're cursing this month of November.
We started dating in November. It was one of those, I'm learning this thing about me. I should warn you that this might be a thing. I don't know what's going to happen.
Right.
And that wasn't me saying, hey, I want this to end. Because I never, it was very rare that I was like, this relationship needs to be over. It was just like,
no.
I get kind of moody, and as a result, I'm a little crappier and irritable.
Yeah.
And not every relationship survives that.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to make a mistake, and if it wasn't already on solid ground, then that mistake was going to cause bigger problems.
Yeah.
It's never really resulted in us, I don't think, having major issues. We've had some problems over the years.
No, and I think maybe getting that warning that first year
set an agenda for you, just like warning you that I work a lot.
Yes, like, okay, beginning. Well, he actually does work a lot, and he actually does. I didn't notice it so much then. I'm like, he says it's cursed, but we're actually having a really good time. This is really good. I'm having a ball. What I notice now, having been with you so many more years, is that you do get in your head. You are very quiet.
Yeah.
And you're not listening. You're ADHD, so your listening is like...
Sometimes it's easier than
your rep is like this when it comes to listening. Okay?
Yeah.
But so... I think that I think understanding that is how you are makes a difference in how I understand it. Because I am also sad or in a depressive mood, and it's like, okay, he's not listening to you. No one listens to me. Oh my God, this is the worst. Like, no one cares about. No, it's what I notice about you in this time of year, and I will say, in all the years that we've been together, this has been a tougher year.
Oh, absolutely,
definitely a tougher year.
Absolutely.
Tougher year for both of us.
Yeah,
and I noticed that you're in your head more.
Yeah.
And you're just not really plugged in.
Yes.
But I'm also not plugged in.
Yeah.
You know, and it is so incredibly hard. We've been in the house
together.
It's cold. It's rainy. It's cloudy. You know, we're trying to keep the house up, keep the kids up, take care of our mom. And we have not been to the beach for our Zen. Yeah. Right. to keep us
together. We usually go to the beach like in February or March.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
we take them twice
we take them in July.
All summer, we are all over the place. We're
normally in the summer,
West
we're
Virginia
all over.
2 and 3 times.
We're bouncing around.
Yeah. And that's
and doing a lot of little trips to different places.
Doing a lot of different trips. But I think the moment that I really realized that you were having a moment and I was having a moment was you posted on your Facebook page, it was called self-sabotage, basically. And it was talking about isolating yourself, not telling people, you know, that you're going through something, rejecting praise and compliments, not asking for help, pushing people away, constantly criticizing yourself. So all those kind of things, you know, which for me goes back to, you know, there's that voice in your head. Yeah. Not everybody has it, right, is what we were talking about before the show. But there's this voice in your head that's constantly beating you down, right? Yes. Or saying you're not worthy, you're not worth it, you're the worst. He's not listening to you because you're the worst, and you just blah blah blah. And, right? And when I saw you post that, and then I saw how many other people really resonated with it, I think it stung everybody because we're like, oh shoot, that's me, you know. And you were actually talking about, you know, yourself. And I think one of the things that just so you know, informed how I feel about you when you're not listening to me and I'm in my mood. Yeah. You know, and you inherently know it intellectually, right?
Yeah, very often when it comes to your loved ones, you know that they don't intend you harm.
They don't intend you harm.
But they're the closest people to you, so it's easiest for them to harm you.
To get hurt. Yes.
And so it's very often that we become sensitive, particularly when we're more vulnerable
and
for whatever reasons.
Sensitive. Yeah.
And to assume that they are saying or doing things intentionally to harm. And I think we spoke about this when we were talking about our marriage in a previous podcast. I try very much to not say or do things that I know can be triggering to you around your identity as a mother and as a wife. Like whenever I'm saying things, and I try to make sure that I communicate that to you clearly. Like, hey, whatever I'm saying or doing, this is not. I'm not coming for you.
Yeah, as a mother,
I may say something flippant. I may make a joke that doesn't land, but I am never assaulting those core identities because I know they're important to you, and I know that anyone would be vulnerable around those things.
Kind of thing.
And so I don't intend to do that.
Right.
What's funny is about
with that.
Yeah. What's funny about the self-sabotage I actually don't do self-sabotage as much. I had my incident in graduate school, and at that point I realized, I am capable of self-sabotage, which is part of the reason it took me so long to get out of graduate school. And then now I don't think I do it as much. Just now I kind of get off my game.
Yeah. Well, I think you have these goals set in your head, right? Especially when it comes to your birthday, you're like, oh man, I'm 43 years old. I still haven't published a book. I still haven't.
Why you got to bring that up? That's rude. Mad rude. Just at me next time.
I'm sorry.
Just
but I
put
feel
it out
like
there.
That's really what gets to you.
Yeah, it's often the life goal
else,
side of it.
We're just kind of like, it's okay. Listen, y'all, he's a great writer. Yeah. By the way, he's tough on himself. He's a great writer. He's written a number of great stories that he has yet to publish because he's so hard on himself.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And every time that he hasn't gotten where he thinks he needs to be, he sort of beats himself up. There is a voice in your head that says,
yes, that's true.
Why haven't you written 20 pages? Why haven't you written,
True. It does not help that like 6 or 7 years ago, I learned that November is National Novel Writers Month.
Right.
And you're supposed to like sit down and write a novel in the month of November. And every year I'm like, it's my birthday. I should do that because I have this aspiration.
They really put it in the wrong month for you.
No, it's the right month, but it's also the worst month because there's so many distractions and my mood takes the downturn.
Sir.
And so I would say that the thoughts about myself and what I've accomplished are symptoms of. So I would say I will agree. I do have a voice. But also because I've accomplished other things in my life. So because I am the doctor I intended to be.
Number of things.
And started a new psychology practice. I've started to see this thing that I experienced, this November downturn, as maybe it's just the consequence of being this kind of high functioning ADHD person who's accomplishing these things all year, is that I need a month off and my brain just decides this is the time. It gets dark, it gets quiet, and it's like, this is a good time to turn down. So I don't actually hate it. I just know I need to write it out, and I try to be nice to myself. Some of it's also I'm just like mentally foggy. Like I have the words, I just can't find them.
Right.
I want to attach.
This is not the optimum time to be trying to reach for ideas.
It is not. It's often a struggle.
Right.
To even like what's the word for this thing? Literally in some of my sessions, I'm like, so I think you're what's the word? Feeling.
What was I saying again? Yeah.
Feeling things. Feeling fun things. What's another word for fun things? Joy, I guess.
Right.
So I don't criticize myself a lot, or I'm not really down on myself. I just know I'm moving slowly. So over the years, I have learned just be nice to yourself when you're feeling like this because you need it the most right now.
And that is the biggest deal. I do have a voice in my head, and that voice in my head, she's mad rude. She's mad rude, and she says a lot of things that
no one would ever say to you.
No one that I would never say to anyone else. That I would never say to anyone else. And I recognize that there's that difference, right? I see somebody else that's going through the same thing, and I'm like, oh, God bless you.
Yeah,
I'm here for you if you need something. Are you doing okay? And that's kind of one of the ways that I cope, right? If I feel like down on myself and I see somebody else who's going through something similar, Facebook, whatever, I send love out. If I don't, it doesn't matter if I know you or not. If you're in a group that I'm in and I see you're struggling with something, I'll send you a message and say, hey, praying for you. God bless you. You're doing fine. That's always really important.
I tend to say that I need to in my head, I'll think, you need to send up like a flare to your friends. So like your guy friends or whomever I let in.
Your group,
and have them
do like a check, a check, right? To say, hey,
But I don't often do it. And that self-isolation is one that I definitely do a lot unintentionally. My mom used to say that when I was in a mood, I would be like a ghost around the house.
Oh my gosh, you're like raw.
Where I'm just kind of moving around in my own.
You don't even know you're there. It's crazy.
I do a lot of dissociating during this time, so it's a lot of like I've like lost hours to social media. Just like what was I even doing for the last hour? Or video games is my one.
But you're not there.
Yeah. Video games is one of my main. Like I don't feel like having to think anymore. I'll just go. Shoot some things in this video game.
I always feel okay when you're playing video games because then it means you're engaging in something.
No, I get to the end of it like I've had an episode of the podcast to edit for 4 days and I just haven't done it. So I'm annoyed with myself because you can't play video games and edit the stupid thing.
Right, but it's something that gives you joy.
Yeah, I'm usually enjoying myself a little bit. Enough.
Yes. But that counts. That matters, right?
Yeah.
Like how many days did it take me to braid my hair? One of the things that I enjoy as part of my self-care. It took me 2 days to do it. I probably could have done it in 1 day, but with kids, it's it's a different schedule.
They were bothering her the entire time. I'm like, give that lady some room. She just needs a minute. She just wants to do her self-care. She does not want you hanging out in here. I just want to
braid hair, and I want y'all to stop knocking over
and flipping and flopping on the bed and arguing with each other and fighting.
It's a lot.
Kids are really hard for this, particularly kids in a quarantine where they don't leave. Like, honestly, normally during this time of year, I would be home by myself a couple of days for different things. Like my birthday. And so I'd have the sort of quiet. I'd make myself something interesting for lunch. And, wander the streets, going to buy donuts and going to record stores. So you would
have your birthday off. And then November 11th, I get that day off because I'm the only one that gets a holiday for work.
Yeah, the Veterans Day.
Veterans Day is the day that I get to be home alone by myself.
Yeah.
Not working. And the kids are at school and you're off at work.
Yeah.
So previously, we would have these opportunities of time to recharge, right? In a nice, quiet, empty house.
Right.
We don't have that anymore.
Totally unavailable to us now.
Totally unavailable to us. So you've got to find other ways, are there things, as a psychologist, are there things that you would tell people that they could do during this kind of time where you're in the house with everybody? So, you've been in the house since March.
Yeah.
There's no quiet place in the house. What would you say to somebody like myself who doesn't have a corner of the house to hide from these kids? Like, what is your self-care? What is your recommendation for getting through the SADs, if you will?
Yeah. So, there's a variety of things that we encourage people to do. Okay. Exercise is a major thing.
I love to run.
Yeah, short walks, at least 20 minutes can be good if you can do that daily. Okay. Even no matter what the weather, trying to get out and take some walks can be a really great way. One of the things I noticed that I did mess up at the beginning of this was not getting up out of my chair enough. I can now sit in the same place for hours just because I'm session to session to session. So I know that I need to get up and maybe schedule around the idea that I get up and walk around and step outside for a bit. And I always tend to notice that more once the weather turns, because once it becomes harder to step outside, then I'm like, oh, I wish I could go outside.
Right now, no, I can't.
Right. Yeah. Doing things in your environment, since we are trapped in our homes, doing a lot of things in your environment that bring you some sort of stimulation. Recognizing that the five senses are one of the core ways in which we soothe ourselves. So having scents in your environment that you enjoy. So good smells, good visuals. So, maybe changing up the artwork in your house since you've been in there for quite some time. Right. Putting new pictures up or new images up or
that's a good idea.
Some sort of painting or something like that. Soft things. Having soft things in your environment, maybe a good warm robe.
A really nice robe, a really cool blanket. One of the things that I think we've both really enjoyed is, if you have your TV on and maybe if you're reading a book, if you have an opportunity to do that, there's there's webcams.
Yeah.
Where just all over the world, you can look at the beach. Yes. You can look at, I was watching Greece. Yesterday.
I did that at the very beginning of the pandemic when I started working in my office. 5 days a week, 6 days a week.
One of my monitors
would just be a webcam. There's one Norwegian archipelago that I would look at just because it was nice and a couple of beaches that I would look for.
Because you have one monitor for the webcam because you have how many?
5 monitors. We've covered this already.
I just wanted to...
At a different podcast. We're just bringing it back.
I wanted to cover that again. Yes.
So doing things that bring things in through your senses that can be soothing. Okay. So good taste. We already do. Comfort food is called comfort food. So that's one of the reasons a lot of people eat a lot during this time is because it can be comforting. But you want to make sure you're monitoring that. The problem with sugars and salts is they may contribute to that sluggish feeling you're already having as a result. So I often tell people to make sure that you're eating healthy fruits and vegetables. Try and avoid the complex carbs, even though you're craving them, or eat them in moderation.
So you're trying to say find the healthy stuff that tastes good to you and feels warm.
Yes, if you can.
Which is hard.
It can be, but there's a benefit to it. And just the act of looking for that, trying things out. That's what I always tell people when it comes to depression and anxiety. Just believe that you can try things, because depression and anxiety will often make you feel helpless. Right. And the helplessness compounds. So to fight it, you must do the things that are against what depression wants. And that is thinking that there's a will and there's a way. Right. Now, I know it takes effort. I always tell people this. I know it takes effort, and it's not just flipping a switch and saying, I'm going to be better because I want to be better. It's really committing to the idea that it could be better, even if I don't think I could see a way.
Right.
And so that means always trying something and believing that trying something is better than nothing. Right.
Yeah. And oftentimes there may be multiple things that that you want to try or that you need to try. And you have a list of 10 things, but that one thing will be the thing that you even if it's a small thing.
And I always tell people to try things even when you're feeling good. Because you can learn like, oh, I tried this little, I tried the webcam and it made me feel good on a day I wasn't feeling so bad.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you just need a little bit of feel good to get you through a moment.
Right.
And you can just say, well, you know what? That webcam worked that one day. If I try it again today when I'm feeling horrible, then maybe it'll really pick me up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other things you can do is developing a comfort kit. That's like, what are some of the things that you can have available to you? Like I said, soft things, warm things, good foods. Maybe a massager. What are some things that make you feel? It's a massager from Brookstone. What are the things you can have in your environment that help you feel a little bit like, okay, this makes me feel better. This makes me feel, comfortable.
Right. And it's a little tougher because of COVID, right?
Yeah.
So, there's that additional thought of, I could have somebody come to my house and give me a massage. Well, if he wears a mask and I wear a mask, I can still do this, right?
Yeah.
So don't let that be.
You got to do a certain
feeling.
amount of, you might feel like you have to do a certain amount of like negotiating to figure out how.
Right. But it may still really be possible, right?
Yeah. Don't give up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so other things you can do is, so here's what I said before. Brain is a problem-solving pattern recognizer. Right. So if you could train your brain to look for the silver linings, train your brain to be looking for the positives in every day. Right. A lot of times when we're feeling down, all it takes is one more down thing. We'll often globalize that. We sort of look,
and it's
once
the
again,
thing that takes you all the way down.
Yeah. And that's because you're looking at things a little too closely.
Yeah.
You're looking at that sine wave of life. So something down is happening. So you're feeling down and you're hoping that something good will make you feel good. Yeah. But if you step back and take the long view, the wider view, the seeing the forest for the trees,
you see that down thing is just a blip.
Just a blip. More often than not, a down thing is maybe a minute of your day, maybe a few seconds of your day, and you'll treat it as if it's the entire day.
Right.
Often I'll tell people, 365 days in a year, you couldn't have had 364 bad days. More often than not, you had 300 bad minutes.
Right.
Maybe 300 bad hours. Maybe if we put them all together. But in reality, in all those days, all those 24 hours, all those minutes, there were actually just a few minutes that were bad. It sucked. Yeah. But there were more minutes that were happy. More minutes that were just mundane. You were just getting by.
Yeah.
And you discounted them because you were focusing on the negative.
That's exactly what it is. So like again, for myself, I deal with anxiety and depression, and there are just chunks or parts of my day where I'm just like, what even is the point? And you're like, oh, this is just, I clean and they're just going to make it dirty again, or I do this and it doesn't matter. And,
But it does matter. And actually that speaks to another thing that I was going to say is routines and discipline.
Right.
A lot of times the depression will have you give up on those because you're thinking to yourself, it doesn't matter.
Right.
But there are the things we call the activities of daily life. So getting up, showering, keeping your environment clean and organized. Absolutely makes a difference. And having structured activities that you're going to do. Just like we said before, the rituals of the winter. And the fact that we're losing those is going to take its toll.
Right.
But we do have to be very cognizant of maintaining routines and building routines where they may not be necessarily.
You've done really very well with that. That's what is keeping you.
Yes, I mean, as a person with ADHD, the routines are what keep me alive.
Yeah.
Like without them, I would make horrible mistakes. And it's actually been a little harder during this COVID time.
Right.
Because COVID has wreaked havoc on my ability to concentrate.
But you've established your own sort of.
I established quite a few routines.
Yeah.
And they are specific to this time right now. But they have been.
They could change later. Yeah.
Yeah. They will have to. But having the routines does help me, and I have to stay on top of them. So it's like every day I shower. On days I go into work, I dress for work. On days that I'm not going into work, I still dress up a little bit for the top up, at least. I was
going to say you,
so I may be wearing the same jeans all week, but I'm wearing a sport coat 3 days a week and, a button up and a sweater 2 days a week.
Right.
As just sort of to help delineate, what my attitude should be in those two different environments.
Right. Because it matters.
I've gotten into the routine of making myself lunch when I'm at work. So every Monday I go in and I go to Kroger's, I walk around at Kroger's during my lunch hour, buy what I need for lunch, and then you eat that all week. And that some of that And, some of that practice and routine is part of what keeps my brain occupied so that it's not worried about the much larger global fate.
Right.
That's part of why this season is much worse for a lot of people is COVID makes it so that we cannot predict the future with any certainty. Which is heavy for people with ADHD, helping for people with any sort of mental illness. Because now there is no solid footing. There is this sense of dread, this sense of I'm spending a lot of my time and energy on the abstract, just stuff to worry about.
When will this even end?
When will this end?
Yeah.
And so I need these sort of day-to-day, just focus on. Sometimes I focus in on the small things. What's a small thing I could be doing next to feel better? So learning to look for the silver linings and maintain a routine that can help you feel as if things are being accomplished. And that those little accomplishments can grow into much larger accomplishments because they allow you to feel like something's getting done. And sometimes we just need that. One of the things that I like about certain chores, and my wife will attest, she's not a big fan of washing dishes, but I like dishes because when you wash them, they're done. Like the job is done. And so you don't have to think about it once it's done. Like in my job, there are often ambiguous outcomes. So, when I'm trying to help a person be a better person or help a person develop confidence or defeat depression, it could take a while and it could be very ambiguous and abstract. But when I wash dishes, the dishes are done. So having tasks like that where there is a finite beginning, middle, and end, you have dirty dishes, you wash them, and they are clean dishes. Helps me to feel like there is some order that I am adding to the world when the world is falling apart.
It's very interesting that's okay. I never thought of that. I do understand that.
Yeah, I developed
helpful.
Yeah, I developed a respect for chores in graduate school because it was like I'm doing this thing that doesn't always seem to make sense, and I don't know where it's going. But
so abstract, you don't know when it's going to end.
But if I rake these leaves, the leaves are raked.
Right.
Like that there's no question or judgment. No one's going to assess it and be like, well, I don't think you did it quite good enough.
Right.
It's like, it's on me.
Right.
And so sometimes those sort of simple tasks, or even if they're laborious, it's like beginning, middle, and end. That's why I don't love working on cars, but I do like when I have a simple car problem to solve, even if it's something as difficult as like taking out an alternator in a car I've never seen before. It's like, oh, once I've done that, I feel a sense of pride that something was accomplished.
It's done and this car now runs.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
That's how I feel about doing hair. Right.
Yeah.
I've learned how to do a number of hairstyles now, and they're looking better and better as I practice, and it feels good, and you accomplish something, and it's not as tough as my job.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, if you mess up, you kind of can go back and fix it and that kind of thing. So that's sort of what I've been clinging to. But I also like getting the house together. That's also it's been a little tougher just because, you do complete something and it looks nice.
Yeah, but you have kids and you have these chaos agents. I call my children.
That's my hump. That's
will totally destroy the environment.
Yes.
As if you did nothing.
As if you did nothing. And that is what gets me incredibly sad. Before COVID, it's sort of like, I know. But I need to get it together anyway.
Yeah.
This is what needs to happen. But now it's like, I'm doing this all the time now.
Yeah. Because
and I'm sadder because so it's like, what's the point?
Right. But the point often is that getting something done.
Yes.
But that feels better than doing nothing.
It does. And it does feel good to be able to walk through and
have a clean space. That's why it is paramount that once I got this office cleaned, it is set up in a way that I'm going to be a little cluttered because that's me. So the desktop is going to be cluttered.
Your office is the nicest in the house.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going and notice that I fight to keep it that way. Like I do whatever it takes to make sure that it does not get overrun in any way because I need one. I work in this space literally 5 days a week and I need a clean space to work in to keep my mind uncluttered. But two, it's just how I need my world ordered in this particular way.
Yeah.
And so
you do a lot better than I do. So if you we joke about Cup City, but if you see any part of the house, if I'm in a worse depressive mood, it reflects my brain, essentially.
Yeah.
So stuff is everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. I usually try. So the difference with your side of the bed is it's a walk around to your side of the bed.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember when we lived in Paradise at the Paradise Cottage.
Oh, the first house. Yeah.
Yeah. I would take everything out because your side of the bed was, I feel like your side of the bed was near the door.
It was near the door.
And I was in the corner.
Yeah. You were in the corner. I was near the door, and there was the window there, and you could just walk over and just...
I could take stuff out when I left. I could pick it up, roll my eyes, and walk it to the kitchen. But it was also a much shorter walk. Like, it wasn't down a whole flight of stairs.
Right.
You definitely need a dumbwaiter in this house so that you could send dishes down.
There's definitely more square footage to keep clean.
And kids who will go into every square footage and mess stuff up. And you're like, you don't even need to go in this room. Why are you in here messing stuff up?
And that's the biggest thing for me. Like, once I get into OCD mode, I can clean the house from top to bottom and get everything perfect. Right? But since COVID, it's like I can get some of it. Right. You know, my energy.
You're here more, but it's harder to get more done.
I'm here more. So I could literally clean twice as much as I was cleaning before, right?
But you also might not have the energy or the drive to do it because you're here all the time.
Exactly. I don't have the energy or the drive.
Yeah.
And
I used to be way more on top of laundry when I knew I wasn't going to be here on Monday.
Right.
But now that I'm here more days a week.
To get it done. Yeah.
And that's notorious for me. Some of that is my ADHD. If I know I have more time, it takes me longer to do it than if I know I have a finite amount of time and it needs to get done quickly. Then I will almost always get it done within that time. But
Honestly,
if you spread it out, I get less done, considerably less done.
The more I hear about ADHD, I'm like, our kids never had a chance.
No.
Executive functioning disorder, like it's
real in these streets.
It's very real in these streets, and I remember always working very, very hard to start something and complete it.
Yeah.
Right. And that goes with cleaning. I mean, I was the kid that if you said clean a room, I would start with my book bag and organize everything in it and then go from there, which is micro as opposed to macro.
Yeah.
You know, and so oftentimes I've had to reassess the situation and say, just get the stuff off the floor. Start with that.
Yeah.
You know, and I notice, you know, that I've learned those kind of things because the kids are the same way. They're like, I don't know where to start. This room is a mess. And it's like, okay, get all the toys and put them in the toy bin, you know, which helps me, which further informs, you know, okay, they'll need to have a place for specific sets of toys so that they know where to put them.
Right.
You know, you go to school and that room is clean when you leave it. You go to Miss Turnerberry's classroom, that stuff is back where it belongs.
Right.
Because everything has a place.
Right.
You know, it's like
and they
office.
stop them immediately. Like, we give them a lot more room to, like, they're playing with something and they go to another room and we don't even know to stop them. But at school, it's like, no, there's someone standing over the room.
You're done at
actually similarly in here. Like, if they leave Legos on the floor, I'm like, hey, why are you walking out without putting those Legos away?
Right.
You're totally allowed to play with them. But if you are done, then you need to put them back in the bucket before you leave.
And when I'm on top of it and I'm walking around the house and stuff like that, and I see that they've moved on to something else, I can remind them at that time to say, oh, no. Are you done eating this? Are you done playing with this?
Right.
Put it away.
Right.
But to have to do that all the time during the times of COVID is exhausting.
Yes, very.
I don't have it in me.
And it's funny because I was just saying to my brother on a phone conversation, like, I used to think my dad was crazy because he'd run in, we'd be doing something and he'd run into the room and start yelling at us out of nowhere. What felt like out of nowhere. Like, why y'all be leaving this stuff all over the place? And it just felt like, what is the matter with that dude that he's always yelling at us about random things that don't seem to make sense? Yeah. But in reality, you know, he's just living his life and he has a trip over our garbage.
Yes.
You know, I now understand that as a dad.
You yourself as a dad.
He was not the villain of the story, I was.
Right. You personally as a dad have to search for your shoes.
Oh my God. Every time I come home, I take off my work shoes and I put on my Crocs to walk about the house so that I can be comfortable.
Yeah.
And for some reason, every time I go to work, and as we've said, I leave my stuff exactly in the same place every time. So there's a pair of shoes in here. There's a pair of shoes under my bed.
Yeah.
That's where I expect them to be. But every time I come home, these kids have moved them about the house for zero reasons. There are zero reasons for them to be messing with my shoes other than they just get into my shoes.
Let me tell you what's happening. So your oldest Son named after you.
Son with my name and my face.
Son with your name is where he's just wearing your shoes. He's like, oh, I'm going to go outside and put on his shoes. Even though his shoes will be in the same.
His shoes are down by the door.
His shoes are down by the door.
To get my shoes from up here.
To wear your shoes. And then Victoria will take your shoes and, make them into people. And and there you go.
And now I can't find my shoes.
Now you can't find your shoes.
And now I'm mad when I come home, looking all over for my shoes so I can get my
Where my shoes at? And I'm like, I don't know.
I want my shoes. I just want them to be where I left them.
Did they take your shoes? I didn't know they took your shoes.
They totally took my shoes. And I'd just like to know if anyone's seen my shoes so that I may have access to them.
Where'd y'all put your daddy's shoes?
Because for me, I need this. It's all I have.
It's all you have.
It's all I have.
Yeah.
And so, And so another thing, and let's wrap up some of these things that we suggest that people do.
Okay.
Limit your social media or media consumption.
Yeah.
A lot of times, media just feeds us bad news. I mean, that's the model of the news stations, is to give us something that tantalizes or excites us.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's death and despair. So limiting that, just taking a break from that, or social media. A lot of times we use social media for little dopamine hits just to connect with people. And so saying, taking a break from social media, just like I'm telling you that you're craving carbs, and you should take a break from them, and maybe not eat them as much daily, maybe not daily being in your social media, maybe taking a hiatus or two as a way to help replenish yourself, because it's
fasting a bit from it.
Fasting a bit. Because I know personally, as I said, I can get into a social media hole where I've lost several hours to watching TikTok videos and Instagram.
And you're on Facebook. YouTube, and it don't even make sense, the stuff that you're
right. And it's like, how long have I been doing this? I just lose 2 hours on weekends. Like I said, when I have a lot of time, it's like suddenly I sat down at the computer today at 3, and the next day it was 4, and I was like, I still haven't gone to Sam's. I have things to do.
Right. I was up at 4 o'clock this morning, 5 o'clock this morning, just watching random YouTubes.
Yeah. And I usually know once I've gone to my third social media, let me also check out Twitter. Wait a minute. I've been to Instagram and Facebook. Right. Now I really need to stop.
I've been on Pinterest, and now
what
am
I even searching for? There's no way to even satiate this hunger.
And the problem is, when I ask that question, it's like, oh, no. You were going to look up that recipe. Okay, see.
And I never did it. And then, oh my God, that's genuinely been me for the last few months, but definitely in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah.
I had a specific task, and I opened my computer and never did the initial task. I did 4 other things that don't matter at all.
Yep. Because those other tabs are already open.
Yeah.
And you're like,
and I'm suddenly like, I've got a million articles. There's an article about the Obama memoir and the Million MAGA March I'd like to read. But also, what I've gotten better at since quarantine is, if it's still up for 2 days, I don't care about this anymore.
Facts.
So there's quite a few things about, quite a few MAGA things. I'll be like, well, what happened here?
Don't care.
And if I don't read it by the end of the day, I'm like, I don't care. I think I got the gist. It doesn't matter. I don't need to read the whole thing.
Nope.
So limiting your social media is a very clear way you can help sort of cleanse your mind a bit. And finding other things. I think books are better. Because once again, books have a beginning, middle, end. You often feel a little bit better when you dive into the world of a book. I've got tons of books I want to read. I often struggle a little bit with getting into them during COVID. This is a time where I should have read a bunch of books.
Yeah.
Usually I'll binge a show, and to me that's often similar. So it's I'll sit down and over 2 or 3 days watch a whole show and be like, okay, I got a story out of that.
Yeah.
But I haven't been able to get my mind all the way into reading, and I want to. I just haven't done it yet.
You really just said exactly what I was going to say, which was, going back to reading, if that's something that you enjoyed, is incredibly important. It does feel different.
Yeah.
I have the Kindle app on my phone, and I've read a few books there. I've killed a couple of books that way.
Yeah.
But there's something about having, at least for me, a physical
you're
book.
Old school.
I am. I
have a lot of physical books.
And some people have Audible too, right? So they listen to it. But I feel like if I'm going to listen to Audible, I could probably listen to podcasts.
Yeah.
I used to listen to podcasts.
Podcasts are great.
Podcasts are awesome.
During this time.
All right.
Hey, we're on a podcast right now.
Check us out.
Right.
Get into it.
Right.
I think they're great, but again, I'm in the hump where I'm trying to get back to the things that I love.
Yeah.
Right?
So I've learned anytime I take a social media fast, I usually spend that time reading a book, and I almost always feel better when I'm doing that instead.
Okay.
So it's like anytime you're in the bathroom, and normally you'd be like, well, let me scroll through Facebook real quick. It's like, oh, if I just read a chapter of a book, one, I'm not going to sit in there for as long, and two, I'll go, oh, okay.
There's some escapism there, right?
Yeah.
Because
it feels way more escapist than Facebook tends to feel.
Right.
Because at Facebook, you're being assaulted by maybe opinions that bother you or trigger you or
then
any
you
number
fall
of
down
things.
that rabbit hole of comments, and it's like you are the a-hole. Yes, definitely.
Yeah. And so that often doesn't feel as like, but when you get to the end of that book, you're often like, okay. Yeah, that was a satisfying story.
Yeah.
So there is a certain amount of satiation that comes from reading a book. Then I think, and this is just personal for me, I can't speak for everyone, but like then reading, say, an article or a Facebook thing where the comments are going to be triggering.
I feel like the articles, they end and you're like, what? Is that it? Is that
Well, often more often than not, it's like there's like comments. So articles are written to be either debated or agreed with.
Yeah.
And that's kind of different. Like books may have debates in them, but the characters are going back and forth.
Beginning, middle, and end.
But there is definitely a beginning, middle, and end.
Storyline.
Yeah. So I think books are a better use of my time, and every time I do it, I'm like, I should do this more, and then I get back into Facebook the next time I sit down on the toilet, and then get annoyed. So films and television, going through Netflix, finding new things to watch. Zoom. So socialization is a big one. I don't know if I said that at the beginning, but finding ways to socialize. We were trying to avoid the election night. We did a Zoom party, and that was super fun.
It was
and
great.
a good way to distract yourself.
You put that out there, and everybody was like, absolutely.
Right. And so it says to me I should do that more often.
Absolutely.
And that doing that could be a way to stay connected with people because I just don't get to have as many conversations with people.
Yeah.
And in many ways, the podcast was an opportunity to have conversations that I don't get to have. So
Right. So this is the one time that we get to have uninterrupted conversation about something that's important to both of us, and I think we've connected a lot doing this podcast.
I agree.
And so it's something that I look forward to every week. And then like you have your text groups and I have mine, where we're like,
my text groups are largely for sharing memes. Like it's all my guy friends. We just kick memes back and forth. We rarely ever have a full conversation.
Bruh, mine's not much different.
Yeah. It's one of just LOL. Did you see this? She got a big old word. Yeah. It's just guy stuff.
Our memes are the same. Like, me and my besties and, my cousin.
I have a few Facebook groups where we do similar things.
Yeah. But, sometimes we'll have snippets of I'm having a rough day.
Yeah. And you can really kind of open up.
You can kind of open up and that kind of stuff.
I've thought about doing like a hall space group chat.
I think it would be great. I think it would be great. It's a great way to connect with people safely and sort of just,
Yeah, it's a little easier.
And there's no
Discord.
pretense. It's like, if you're available, join us.
Say
and if not, I'll see you next.
Yeah, let's get on your nerves.
We'll schedule it for another. Yeah. So like we had a cousins chat, which I was so glad to be a part of.
Yeah.
And people popped in, people popped out. But we had just a great time.
Yeah. And I think scheduling, like thinking about the holidays and how the holidays would normally be time to connect with people. It's like, let's do some family Zoom parties.
Gosh, we're going to miss
on those
all
days
because
we're not going to get to have those moments. You'll still be craving kind of those connections with people.
No. And as an introvert, I'm saying I am going to miss.
You're missing. Look, even you.
Look at me.
Even you.
Growth.
Having hobbies, you might find yourself less interested in hobbies.
Yeah.
But it's still good to like maybe not super intensive, like even if it's just like coloring or, watercolors or painting or drawing.
So are you suggesting that people go to the hobbies that they originally liked or to try new hobbies?
Either or. Try to find something. It doesn't have to be super intensive, but maybe collecting something. Yeah. Trying things. Remember I said before, to fight depression wants you to not do anything.
Right.
I mean, once again, depression wants you to isolate, stay in bed, not do anything, not get interested in anything.
Because what's the point?
Because what's the point? Yeah. And so some of it is just trying things. So being open. And you might say painting didn't work, it wasn't great, but just keep trying things and see if you felt a little bit better or a little bit more engaged.
Yeah.
And if that caused some improvement. in your mood. And so sometimes you're not going to get yourself all the way out of the lull, but if you ride yourself up a little bit, maybe you can get to the next moment.
Yeah. It's like you take 2 steps forward, right? And
therapy, I'm going to always say, considering therapy, people are doing teletherapy. I'm currently doing teletherapy with some people. If you're a friend of mine, I can't be your therapist. I can be your friend, but whatever.
But can you, in the show notes, suggest places for people to go to do teletherapy?
I can. Okay. I do have some resources that I send out to people.
I personally know there is a site called Therapy for Black Girls.
Yes, there is. The Therapy for Black Girls and Therapy for Black Men. Those are 2. And
I didn't know that they had that domain as well. That, That's awesome.
And so that's a good resource if you're looking for where to go and how to get more help and support.
Because oftentimes it's, your issues are specific to your situation, right?
Or you just would like a cultural lens. You want to be able to speak through a cultural lens.
Right.
One of the things that I like about having a private practice is I get to work with young Black people who just have never heard from a Black therapist.
Young Black men in particular, which is incredibly
sees them
important.
Who they are. And can sort of not necessarily, like, I don't understand everything about your experience, but I'm willing to agree with you. And, I'm a person to say, white people are crazy, right?
Right.
Whereas a white therapist might not ever think to say that in a validating way.
Shout out to Mom, who's going to be bothered by that statement.
My mother's listening to the podcast. She does not like how much I talk about.
Shout out to Mom for listening,
right.
And also our regular listeners. Natalie and
shout out to friend of the show, Chris Reese, who unfortunately was hospitalized with COVID and got out a couple of days ago, but we are definitely praying and thinking about you.
He came home the other day from the hospital. We were praying for you. Yeah. We're so glad that you're doing better. Hopefully you've been able to rest.
Yes.
And
stay relaxed. But also get up and be a little active, because that's one of the things they told me when I had it, is some exercise and activity is good for you, even though you feel like a loss of energy and lethargy.
Yeah.
It's really difficult, but you got to keep moving.
But you got to keep doing it. You got to push through.
A couple of other things I want to say before we get close to the end here. Moderating alcohol. A lot of people think alcohol is good for you, but alcohol is a depressant. So if you're already struggling with depression, lessen the use of alcohol. It may feel like it's helping, but it's more often than not. And withdrawal from alcohol. So getting over alcohol can help you, can actually lead to more anxiety. So limiting alcohol, reducing alcohol, no more than 1 glass so many days a week. Never more than 7 in a week if you're a female.
Okay. So we got 7 days in a week. How many glasses?
You should never have more than 7 glasses of wine in a week. You should never have more than 1 in a day. As a female.
I get it and get it.
Yeah.
As a female, like my height, my size, my weight.
As a female, the National Institute of Health says no more than 3 in a day, no more than 7 in a week.
I don't have 3 in a day. Oh my God.
Good.
No.
And a lot of people have been talking about self-care. Some people, like their bosses, are telling them self-care.
They don't mean it.
Okay, your boss might not mean it, because your boss just needs you to work and they have to say some things to sound nice to you. But I do think self-care is important. Getting your vitamins,
self-care is definitely
taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
Like I said, those routines, just taking a shower every day is often a very vital part of feeling like a normal, productive, clean person.
And if you need to take a day, take that day.
Yeah.
Take that day.
Take your days off. Don't hoard your sick days.
Save them.
Everybody's a work in progress. And that's one of the key things when we're talking about how you develop some insights into how this is affecting you and the mindset you take into it. Recognizing that everybody's a work in progress, giving yourself some grace and love, as you said earlier. You say things to yourself often that you would never say to anyone else in your life.
To someone else.
And so recognizing when you're engaging in what we call negative self-talk, and how you can recognize what are the triggers for that, what are the moments where that's stronger than others, when is that voice stronger, and how can you love yourself and show yourself some grace through that. As I said before, if you can learn to see yourself with the light of love that you see others, we often would be much kinder, much nicer to ourselves, and help to alleviate some of the burden of these negative feelings. So I'm a big advocate for that. It's something I say a lot, and I just strongly recommend it. Also, there's a thing called light therapy. Talk to your doctor about it. It's getting a light box that will give you a certain lumens of light that they say can be helpful, just like UV light, that can help elevate mood. So having one of those and doing that for a certain amount of time a day can be helpful.
You have a cousin that she changed all her lights in her house.
No, I didn't know that. Yeah, but they say that it really helps. So at least having a light box in your vicinity. And it isn't super expensive now that they have LEDs. They're actually
what do you have to lose? Right.
Right.
Try it. See if you like it. If that doesn't work, try something.
Keep trying
else.
things. That's what I said.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so once again, and a therapist can help you work on some insights, as I said before, to your triggers and awareness of what it is that helps make these moods worse. Sometimes what are the types of thoughts that you have that you need to clean out that are contributing, because sometimes you can't do that on your own. So that's why I'm a strong advocate for having a therapist.
You need to have an objective.
You need an objective outside person who goes, hey, you're thinking that, and I don't think you should think that about yourself.
Yeah.
You don't deserve it.
Thanks.
And letting other people in. Once again, don't isolate. Let other people into the fact that you're struggling and getting help. But putting too much on a person who's not a professional might be too much.
Yeah.
So recognizing they do have their limitations, but they can be supportive, not your full support.
Right.
With that, we are a little bit over time. I was trying to keep this under an hour because I want this show to be one that a lot of people listen to. And I've learned that most people don't always make it to the end if we're an hour and a half or an hour and 20.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll work to edit this one down again. So this was a talk about the COVID SADs and how they can really affect people. So glad you could join us for another conversation at the Hall Space Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah.
We really appreciate you listening.
Mm-hmm.
You know what the music means.
You know what the music means. Our time is up.
I say good day, sir.
I say good day. The Hall Space Podcast is brought to you by Hall Productions, LLC. Show notes and credits can be found at our webpage, thehallspacepodcast.wordpress.com. Any questions, comments, or concerns can be sent to us at thehallspacepodcast@gmail.com. The show is written by Dagger Penn Davis. Music is curated by DJ Cabal. The show is produced by Chuck Jones and recorded at Slash and Trash Studios. If you like what you hear and you want to hear more, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And I hope you all have a good week. And now, another episode of House Hall Theater.
So Richie comes to me the other day, and
Little Richie.
Yeah. Sorry, Ra. He comes in. I'm setting up the decorations for Victoria's birthday, and he's like, just chatting me up, and he's like, I'm really good at keeping secrets. I said, oh yeah, that's good. If someone trusts you with some information, you should keep it to yourself. And he says, yeah, I've got this secret, and I would like to tell you, but I'm scared you're going to be disappointed in me. You and Daddy are going to be mad at me. And I said, no, you just go ahead and tell me. I mean, if you feel like, you want to talk about it, we can always talk about, I want you to feel like you could talk to me about anything.
Yeah.
He's like, yeah, but I'm really good at keeping secrets, and I just don't know. I just really don't want you to be mad. And I said, okay, well, how about this? How about you tell me this, and I promise not to get mad.
Mm-hmm.
And so
which is a bold promise, by the way. Because as a parent, he could have genuinely come to you with anything.
He could have come to me and said, I murdered a frog.
Right.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah.
Right.
But I really just wanted, the fact that he came to me and said, there's something I want to tell you, was like, okay, he trusts me just enough.
Right.
I need to get over that edge and maybe have him, out of all three of our kids, he talks the least.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, what if I told you that I wouldn't be mad, and that I would just kind of listen to you and help you through it? And he doesn't say anything. He goes upstairs. He comes downstairs with this, and I'm going to try not to curse. He comes downstairs and he puts down on the dining room table this skateboarding goofy toy.
And it's not a goofy toy as in it's kind of a silly toy. It is genuinely Goofy from...
It is Goofy, the Disney character Goofy, on a skateboard, looking like a McDonald's Happy Meal toy. He said, Mommy, I got this from school and I forgot to give it back. I stole it. And I feel really bad about it, and I don't want you and Daddy to be mad about it.
Wow.
Listen, when he said, I have something I really want to tell you, I thought he was going to tell me something serious. I braced myself. And then when he went upstairs, I thought, oh man, I ruined it. He's not going to tell me anything at all.
Yeah, he just kind of walked away.
He just kind of walked away.
Okay, so I
screwed it up. I'm going to have to.
He doesn't trust you.
He doesn't trust me.
He doesn't trust you at all. Like,
I'm
nope.
going to have to give him.
I know you said that, but I don't believe it. So I'm going to leave now.
I'm just going to run away like Napoleon Dynamite. And so he comes down with this toy and he's like, I just feel so bad about it. I said, oh, okay. Yeah. So they have toys for before care and after care and in school, and they're really not looking for it. If the school is really concerned about something that you have, they'll call us.
They would have called us.
And they would have asked for it back.
Right. We're not even sure if it's his current school. It could have been any previous school he's attended.
It is
he's been
Goofy on a
3 different schools.
skateboard. It could have been after school care. It could have been YMCA during the summer or one of the winter breaks. Like, it was just,
but it was genuinely eating away at his heart. Like, oh my God.
It was eating away.
I'm a thief. How could I?
I stole it. He was so serious. He was like, he whispered it when he said, he was like, I stole it.
What's funny is like Victoria's stolen like several things from people in our family, and we're like, "Hey, you can't keep taking things from your cousins just because you want it." She's like, "But I wanted it.
But I wanted to play with it."
Yeah, no, but that belongs to someone else, and you need to not take it from them. That's very rude.
Put it back.
Right. But whereas
why?
he's like being eaten alive by taking this.
He is eating alive by this goofy
broken
toy
McDonald's toy
that he doesn't even play with, y'all.
Yeah. Well, how could he play with it? It was like the
forbidden toy.
Yeah. It's like the heart under the floorboards. It was just driving him crazy, and it's taken him years to tell you.
Is this what's on your mind, bro?
Yeah.
You'll be fine, baby. It's okay.
Sorry, statute of limitations has probably run out on this one.
Right.
You're okay.
Aftercare is no longer looking for skating Goofy. Okay. It's perfectly fine.
Right.
But
should be good.
I felt pretty good because I was like, okay, if that's the thing that's weighing on him,
right,
we're all safe.
Yeah.
It's that little one, like you said, that'd be like, this is my mermaid Barbie now.
Right. Right. I'm keeping it. Right.
God bless his little soul. He's so golden.
Right.
Yeah. He felt so bad about it. I was like, I really appreciate you. I took it seriously though. I was like, I really appreciate you telling me.
Yeah.
And I thank you that you trusted me with your secret. So yeah. This is not a big deal. I'll let you know if it is a big deal though. You know, I was like, what they're really worried about is if you take the Chromebook and throw it into the swimming pool or something.
Right.
You know, so he was like, oh, I would never do that. I know you would never do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the point here,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
He's a good soul. As we said, we hope nobody breaks him because he's a good person.
I stole it, mommy.
Our son, the thief.
I feel so bad. I stole it, mommy.
This has been another episode of House Hall Theater.
House Hall. We rise brilliantly.